Hey guys, I'm Dan Lake, the travel editor here at Newshub, and it has been a while since we've actually spoken about travel. But here we are, and the man of travel himself, Dave Coombs, is with us. You're from Flight Centre.
Yep.
We'll just call you the travel expert.
That'll do me. Anything with the word travel in it's
Yeah.
good, mate, at the moment.
How are you feeling? You're probably the same as me. It's like, oh, we're talking about travelling again. How does that feel for you? Not only do you love it, live it, breathe it, but it's also your job as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think if you're in travel, you love it, live it, breathe it. You know, it's a real passion industry for anyone who's involved. So we've been talking through the last year a lot about, imagine that excitement in the pit of your belly when we start booking again, and now we're here. So it's brilliant. It's really, really good first step.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been looking forward to that announcement of the actual date of the bubble for so long, but it did just feel really amazing, you know, when it happened.
It's surreal, actually.
Yeah,
you know, we were talking
is.
back in the office earlier to be booking again. Is, you know, got to remind yourself how we used to do it, right?
Yeah,
So,
and are people booking? I mean, it's been, 24-ish hours now. What is the interest like so far?
Yeah, look, the interest is really picked up as it was pre the announcement, which was pretty low interest at that point in time, to be fair. So we're not at pre-COVID levels by any stretch of the imagination, but absolutely a lot of interest from 4 o'clock yesterday on all the way through, particularly online for us, and then I'm hearing reports from the stores that things are buzzing and people are ready to go, particularly you know, to visit family and friends at the moment. You know, birthdays and marriages, as we say, that's been a real sore point for so many customers, and great opportunity for them to go and, you know, if you're prepared to go in these early days.
Yeah, we had put the call out for questions from the audience earlier, and one topic that just kept on coming up, and you'll know the word I'm going to say, and that's airfares.
Yes.
Boy, have they been fluctuating just in the past 24 hours. There doesn't seem to be any sort of rhyme or reasoning to it, but there has been some suggestion that we'll get nowhere near those old $400 returns to Sydney that you used to be able to get. What are your thoughts on where airfares will be going short to mid-term?
Yeah, it's a good question, and probably on the front of our lips as well, to be honest with you. I don't subscribe to this theory that was going around sort of in the lead up that, you know, airfares are going to be far more expensive than they ever were. And already, you know, to your point, we've seen in 24 hours, you know, the cost of return flights halved.
Yes.
And I think it comes down to supply and demand. And ultimately, airlines have got a whole bunch of aircraft sitting on the ground that are costing them money, and they'd much rather have them in the air and be flying them and having customers and encouraging customers to fly. So, you know, I think we're at the moment, it's probably about that 650 to 700 return on the last pricing that I've seen, but it is changing so quickly. You know, I wouldn't, Qantas have come aggressively to the market. We know Virgin are planning to come at a point in time when they believe demand is back. Jetstar, the more carriers on a route, the more competition there is, and that's always been the case. Yeah,
interesting you did mention Qantas there, because they've been quite aggressive. They'd be close to having perhaps even more flights than Air New Zealand coming on the Tasman, and they're introducing 2 new routes. So do you think we could be in for a bit of an airfare war at some point?
Yeah, look, I think that speaks to the fact that, you know, these carriers, and Qantas and Air New Zealand are perfect examples, have big international networks, and at the moment the only route they've got to fly is the Tasman. So why wouldn't they take that on and get their share, or a greater share they had of the customer dollar as previously? So look, I wouldn't be surprised if there is, and that's great for our customers, you know, and you know, us as travellers as well, mate, right? So
book a few planes don't make money when they're sitting on the ground.
No, they don't.
One of the questions we got was, is Western Australia part of the bubble? And we were actually just checking that Western Australia was actually part of Australia, and we can't confirm that, but it is part of the bubble, even though it's a long way away?
At the moment, they're asking that anyone coming in internationally has been in Australia, not Western Australia, for 2 weeks.
Right.
But, you know, these things are changing pretty quickly at the moment as well. So some Australians will argue whether Western Australia is part of Australia as well, to be honest with you. So right here, right now, there aren't any, the Perth services are further away than other cities for that reason, but watch this space. Everything's changing so quickly. That's why we would say, talk to a travel agent, talk to your travel expert, drop into your flight centre, because everything changes so quickly. Pricing, routes, bubble conditions. We're keeping the information up to our guys all the time, so there's a really good resource there.
And there's only so much information you can put on a website when it's just an airfare.
And if something does change, there's someone there to help you out the other end as well.
And on the other end of the phone when you've started your travels. Do you need to have proof of having the COVID vaccine to travel across the Tasman?
No. No, we don't for the Tasman. But I think, and that's a legacy of the good job and the hard work that we've done in both sides of the Tasman to be relatively COVID-free. So no, vaccine is not a condition right now. So no vaccine requirement and quarantine-free. Bring it on.
Now that we've got our own little bubble down here in the bottom of the Pacific, do you think cruise ships might start to float down towards this part of the world as well? Yeah,
cruise ships is an interesting one because they were such incubators early days, right? And got quite a bad name. But a couple of things at play here. If there's a safe bubble within the two countries, I think it's relatively safe to have cruise ships. Certainly in Singapore, there's domestic cruising happening up there already, so there is a precedent for it in other parts of the world. And also as testing improves and the ability to do saliva tests, if you can be sure that a bunch of people on a cruise ship are COVID-free, it's probably one of the safest places to be. So I think the protocols will develop pretty quickly. I don't have a date. It won't be in the next few months, but I think it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, and it would be great to see some of those amazing cruise ships because they've still been
building them. Well, we tried to get one, right?
Yeah.
The Pont tried to get down recently.
And got so close.
Well, they're cruising across the north of Australia at the moment. So, it is happening in markets. We just need it for our market.
It could be worse places. It could be. At the moment, where do you think will be the next place to open to Kiwis once... I don't want to say we get bored of going to Australia, but once we've ticked that off and there's another bubble to open, where do you think will be next? And also, Singapore keeps getting mentioned, even though it's really doesn't fit into that kind of Pacific Islands area at all. It's it's up there in Asia. So why is that mentioned as well?
Look, I think the Cooks is a place that keeps coming up, and I think they're working hard to get that sorted out. And then if you want to think about where we'll go to next, it's thinking about where COVID's under control, and that's why Singapore keeps coming up. They've done a good job. They're relatively COVID-free. I hear about Vietnam a fair bit. I hear about Japan and South Korea further down the track. So countries that have dealt with COVID, and Singapore is actually a great destination in its own right. A lot of people think of it as a gateway, but it's got a lot of attractions up there as well. So as far as I'm concerned, the more the merrier. Let's open these bubbles. Let's get a bubble gun going.
I think that phrase would end up being picked up for a few people. We mentioned earlier before about how you don't have to prove that you've had the COVID test. Is there anything else along those lines that you do have to tick off before you head over to Oz?
Look, it hasn't been finalised yet. We don't have the full information, but what we're hearing is that there will be an expectation for every customer to go to fill in a portal with a declaration, with contact details, the fact that they haven't, contracted COVID in the lead up to travelling, etc., etc. So the government's finalising a portal, is our understanding, and then as we approach these departure dates, we'll be able to get more information out there.
Finally, I just want to talk about people's confidence in booking. And this kind of goes back to your point about having someone to talk to about it, and in this case, in the travel agent. What would you say to people who are thinking, I'm going to wait 6 months, I'm going to wait a year, just to see things kind of get back to a bit more of normality before I book something? What would you say?
I think, I know that we have customers across the gamut of how much risk they're prepared to take on. So there are people who are booked on that 19th and they're ready to go. In fact, you could book 2 weeks earlier now if you were going for 2 weeks, because you don't need to quarantine in Australia, and as long as you come back after the 19th. So get booking right now if you really need to go and want to go. But then I think you'll have, for example, families who don't want to risk a lockdown and not being able to get back to kids if they're travelling for business and all the rest. So a big range. I would say do what you're comfortable with. Talk to our people about what are the conditions, what is it that we understand about what's changing, and make the right decision for yourself, but we can help you make that decision with all the information.
Brilliant, Dave Coombs. Thanks so much. You'll probably be heading off to do exactly what I'm about to do, and that's go compare some more airfares.
Yeah, compare and probably book a couple, I think.
That'll be good. Hey, thanks for joining us, everyone. Travel's starting to happen again, so make sure you keep in touch with us at newshub.co.nz/travel. I'm Dan Lake. See you next time.